what you want. The future could be all so bright, 'cause I can ride with you. Let me ride with you. One day, it's just all it takes to know that all these days.
Welcome to Chopping It Up with Buck. I got my man, Brett McMurphy. We go way back. He's with the Action Network now. He's a college football insider. Anytime I need information, Brett and I go back to our ESPN days. We followed each other for a while, but man, it's been good to read and see all the things that you're talking about. And before we jump into all that, how you doing? How's your summer been, and how's everything on your end?
Yeah, going good, Buck. It's great to catch up, man. Yeah, it's been crazy this past week with all the moves and conference realignment. And, usually these things are spread out over several weeks or several months.
Yeah.
But yeah, it went on warp speed on Friday. And I don't know if you've seen the movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, but I felt like one of those precogs laying in the water. And I'm instead of the murderers, I'm producing all this realignment. And I want to get to the end of the movie where I'm just out in the house, just chilling out, reading a book with no electronics. But unfortunately, that's a ways off, because we don't know what's going to happen with the Pac-12 or Pac-4. The ACC is still unsettled, and yeah, nobody's talking about football. But we got to figure out where everybody's going to be first, I guess.
It's crazy. I'm starting to get my schedule where I'm going to be, but everybody wants to talk about the Pac-12. So you can see over my other shoulder there, that UCLA helmet. I think they started some chips and dominoes. The SEC started a few years ago, but I want to take you back. We were texting back and forth. Larry Scott, and all of his infinite wisdom, because George Kliavkoff is getting a lot of heat right now, and probably rightfully so, because of the inability to get a linear deal. But Larry Scott had Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State, and trying to become the Pac-16. Very close, or how close did that come to happening? And since that time, the Pac-12 it was a Pac-10, and they got Colorado and Utah, but they have not been able to have any financial stability or television stability at all since that Pac-16 time. And that Minority Report kind of started back then, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it's been, Larry Scott deserves some of the blame for getting them to this position. But you know what? Kliavkoff's the one that could have saved them. The same way that Brett Yormark, I don't want to say he saved the Big 12, but again, SC and UCLA leave, Oklahoma and Texas leave. There was the real perception when OU and Texas left to the SEC that the Pac-12 would gobble up the Big 12, but those presidents, the conference didn't want to do that, and ultimately, by them not doing that, has led to their demise. Now, it's easy to say this after the fact, but yeah, it's just, I think there's a lot of challenges, for the Pac-12, just geography-wise. You don't have as many options out there for realignment. I talked about the ACC, that somewhere down the road they could lose. Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina, whatever. But that would be, they're people they can add, from close by. They don't have to go all the way across the country. And now the fact that Cal and Stanford are considering joining the ACC, that's like a lifeline for them. Their travel costs are going to be crazy. And look, everyone's like, well, UCLA and USC are traveling across the country. It's a lot different. For one, you've got Oregon and Washington, out there too. And two, the amount of money that they're going to make is double what the ACC is. And also everyone's, well, no, who wants to see Oregon travel to play Rutgers volleyball team? Oregon is not going to travel to play Rutgers volleyball team. I can guarantee that. Even if they both have volleyball programs, which I don't know if they do. They will regionalize the Olympic sports as much as they can, and they will limit any cross-country competition. But man, it's just so hard for the Pac-12 because, just you get west of Texas, and there's really not that many available schools, and so it kind of puts them in a bind. And then when those schools start joining conferences out east, I don't know what their options were.
Yeah, I think you got to look at also too. The Mountain West has to be sitting back saying, okay, now that you guys have been the big dog for so long, you may need some of our help. But before we get into that, think about Washington and Oregon. What took so long? I mean, I know it was money, but right away I had told people that's going to change. Washington and Oregon have to be, or somebody in the northern Pacific Northwest had to play a role, and they made the most sense out of the schools that were left once the dominoes started falling in the Pac-12. What took the Big Ten so long to bring them on? And I know Fox is going to play a big role in making them whole initially, but what took that so long to happen?
I mean, you named it. It's because of Fox.
Hmm.
The look. You talked to, and I'm sure I know you talked to a lot of people throughout the sport. The Big Ten ads. They don't want to expand. They did not want to expand beyond SC and UCLA. They know why. They know why that happened. That makes a lot of sense. It got in the monster TV deal,
Hmm.
but they were ready to stand down at that. But then basically, Fox flat out said, if we have the money to add Oregon and Washington, it's going to be more financially beneficial for you guys. And so that's why they added Oregon and Washington. A lot of people are like, why don't they add Cal and Stanford and help them out? Well, unfortunately, it's not a charity case, and they're not going to add schools that will not bring them value. And Cal and Stanford do not bring them value despite their great academic success.
Hmm.
The bottom line is, these networks, have a big sway and influence on what happens with conference realignment. And I don't want to say that I know the narrative is, well, the conference, Fox and ESPN are dictating, these schools going to these conferences. I mean, I guess it's how you look at it. I mean, you're in the business, you know how it works. I mean,
Hmm.
these schools, these conferences, they go to their media partners and they say, if we add schools A, B, and C, what is our deal worth? And then, okay, if we stand pat, what is it worth? Or if we add schools D, E, F, what is it worth? And the media companies are being very upfront with them. Well, it's going to be worth this amount, or this amount. And then it's pretty simple. You take the option that makes the most money. So I don't
Hmm.
necessarily think the networks are at blame for that, but 100% Fox is the one that keyed the move of Oregon and Washington to go to the Pac-12, and that came down. I was talking about my being a precog. That literally came down last Friday. Um, about 10 Eastern, a little bit before
Yeah.
10 Eastern, right before the Pac-12 meeting was going to start.
Brett, does it make any? Like, we talked about the Mountain West, and I want to talk football because I mean, you and I are probably getting ready to hit our football season. But this is so fascinating because it happened at a quick pace. It was quiet, 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 and all of a sudden, it was just like a tsunami of information. And I think we're now trying to decipher it for conferences like the Mountain West, the American, some of the some of the Group of Fives that want to move up into that Power Five ideal. What does it do for them? I mean, now that you have Stanford and Cal, I think Stanford is probably holding out for Notre Dame. Cal needs a home. Oregon State, Washington State. Cal will get some of the UCLA money because the UC Regents basically said, no, if you're going to leave UCLA, you have to pay them something. So they have some options. They don't, I don't think Cal wants to be an independent. I think Stanford could be. But like the Mountain West or the Sun Belt, some of these conferences, the American, the conferences that have really started to kind of, distance themselves a little bit from the Group of Five, but still not Power Five conferences. How does this impact them?
Well, for the Group of Five, I mean, look, all you have to do is look at SMU. I mean,
Hmm.
they're in the American. They have basically told the ACC, if you will add us as an ACC member, we will take $0.0 of revenue
Brett,
for the first.
Brett, I've never heard that. I'm gonna go play for
I know.
free. I want to be in your conference. Let me in the
Hey,
club, man.
yeah. Hey, Buck, if somebody comes to you and say, I want to work for you, and they're like, oh, I'm not sure. You don't have to pay me my first 7 years. You're hired. It's like, that's how desperate they are. But I actually I'm actually impressed they're thinking this way because
Mhm.
SMU is looking 20, 30 years down the road. They're not looking 5 years down the road. And they
Yeah.
know what I know and what you know, in that when we get 10, 15, 20 years down the road, we're going to have either two or three, maybe four power conferences, and
Mhm.
then that's it. And if you're not in that higher ground, if you're not getting that big time TV money, you're going to be irrelevant. And I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
But that's the way we're going. And so SMU is looking at it like, if we don't get in now, we may never get a chance. The Big 12's got 4 schools in the state of Texas. They don't need another one. The SEC is not going to bring them on. So this
Mhm.
is like their only chance. So SMU is a perfect example of how desperate these group of 5 schools are. And when we get to that point where the power leagues all settle down, you know, people have talked about this for a long time. Will they split away?
Yeah.
Will they no longer be part of, right now we have 133 schools in the FBS.
Yeah.
And, no offense, but Texas State and Texas should not probably be competing in the same division. But
Well,
that's
Chip
where
Kelly
we're
made
at.
that. Yeah, Chip Kelly made that point the other day. He said, "Hey, it should just be a group of 64 and a group of 64, and we each have our own championship." Basically, the way it's going, and that autonomy 60 that we've talked about for years,
Right.
I agree with that. I think we're moving to that. But what is this? The conference jockeying right now seems to be so intriguing because it's really about the TV folks behind it, but also I will say this: the ones that have been really smart from a business perspective. I give Greg Sankey a lot of credit for his business savvy and some of the books he even reads. I've started reading, and I can see how he thinks and views the world of athletics. You have to think of it from a business standpoint. I'll say the Pac-12 allowing guys like Michael Crow and some of the other folks to kind of try to stay on an academic schedule. That doesn't work now. You have to be aggressive. And Brett, your mark, you said it best. He's come in and said, okay, we you want to make moves that, or you want to be slow with moves. We'll be really quick, and I think they have to as the Big 12. Brett, we were just talking about them being a conference that wasn't going to exist. Look at them now; they're really growing and trying to be assertive in this power game.
Yeah, I mean they went early on the TV rights. They got in front of the Pac-12, and that kneecapped the Pac-12, if you will, because then none of the networks are going to pay more for the Pac-12 without USC and UCLA than they did the Big 12.
Yeah.
And it was a gamble because everyone said, well, the Big 12's not getting the amount of money they should get by going early. You should have waited. And your Mark has said that much, that if we would have waited
Yeah.
until now to try to get our deal, we wouldn't have got the same money because the mass layoffs at ESPN, other media companies having some issues. So yeah, it was all about timing and everything. And look, I'm an Oklahoma State guy, so I can
Mhm.
diss my own conference. The only reason, Buck, the only reason the Big 12 has stability is because nobody else wants us. Like
Yeah.
the
Mm.
SEC got OU and Texas. The Big Ten doesn't want anybody from the Big 12. The
Mhm.
SEC doesn't want anybody else from the Big 12. And so that's what's made the Pac 12 and ACC, their futures not in doubt, but kind of precarious because the Pac 12 had, these brands, Oregon, Washington, that
Yeah.
the Big Ten wanted. The
That's
SEC and
exactly right.
The SEC and Big Ten would love to have some of these ACC schools if they can get over the wall and get out of the grant of rights, a Florida State, a Clemson, a North Carolina, Miami, etc.
Mhm.
And so because nobody wants the Big 12 schools, they kind of all banded together, and now they're going to end up surviving.
Hey, one last thing on this, and we'll talk some ball. I have Brett McMurphy from the Action Network on with me, and Brett and I go way back. And he's an Oklahoma State guy. I'm a UCLA guy. So the Conference of Champions is gone. Rock, skate, roll, bounce, no longer out of the picture, right? Gone as we know it. But Brett, I gotta ask you, just when you think about the Pac-12 as a conference, the football is actually going to be pretty good there this year. When you look at the quarterbacks that potentially on paper, especially Caleb Williams at USC, if USC has a defense, they'll be good. Washington, I think people are sleeping on Michael Penix, who had a couple rough games last year, but they were 11-2. I'll tell you, Oregon State. Jonathan Smith has a squad out there. There's a bunch of schools. Utah, they're going to be tough. Kyle always has those guys ready to play. There's a lot of talk about Dion and Colorado. I don't know how good they'll be on the field. They'll elicit a lot of excitement off the field, but there's some probably pretty good football on paper out of that conference this year. Oregon with Bo Nix. I mean, there's just, if you go around the conference, they've got some really good teams that could play, but they have some weaknesses as well.
Buck, I think that at the top of the Pac-12, they're as good as any conference out there.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I mean, I vote in the AP poll at the AP preseason top 25 comes out Monday. I already put out my preseason ballot, which, hey, first time in history, no one disagreed. They all agreed.
I hate I meant to send something back to you. I hate your poll, man. It sucks since you didn't get any hate.
I love the people that say you're an idiot and they spell it Y-O-U-R. But no, I love the Pac-12 this year.
Yeah.
I have Washington at 7. I have Oregon at 9. I have Oregon State at 13. I love Jonathan Smith. I think he's the most underrated coach in the country. And what this sucks at what's going on with their school, because now they may get relegated to the Mountain West. I got SC in there at 14. I got your Bruins in at 19. I got Utah at 22.
Why do you have Utah so low? What is it with Utah with Cam Rising coming back? I know he was injured late last year, but
the Cam questions, and you lose they had a monster tight end and he's gone. I just think, and it's not to diss them that, they're only 22. I just, they won it back to back. I just think they're going to have a little bit of regression. Look, they're still a top 25 team. And really, Buck, when I do these rankings, once I get through the first 6, I could rank 30 schools in my next 20 spots. And it's just, mix them up or whatever. But you're right about the quarterbacks. You've got multiple guys that could be Heisman Trophy contenders. You've got, all the quarterbacks. I mean, you legitimately, everybody I just named, probably with the exception of Oregon State, could have a Heisman Trophy contender if that school runs the table and gets to the college football playoff. Because, unfortunately, to be a Heisman contender, you got to probably get to a New Year's Six game. Or be a college football playoff contender. But yeah, I mean, all those guys, Rising, Nix, obviously. I don't think Caleb Williams is going to repeat, and that's nothing against Caleb. I vote for the Heisman. I have nothing against guys repeating, but I just know a large majority of the voters are going to want something new. They're going to want a different story. They're going to look I hate this because I've seen it happen before. What Caleb Williams does this year, it won't be what he did. It will be what he didn't do, or comparing it to last year. And there's no way you can meet that scrutiny. So yeah, I mean, the Pac-12 on the field, their final year, they're going to be very solid. But for getting into the college football playoff, as far as the conference overall, I just wonder if they're not going to just cannibalize each other, because they all are so good. They are so top heavy. And you got to have you can't have 2 losses to get in the playoff. And I'm not sure anybody can finish the season with less than 2 losses, because I think that's how good the top of that league is.
Well, we're going to take a short break. We got Brett McMurphy from Action Network on Chopping It Up with Buck. We'll be right back.
At Heslop Wealth Advisors, our goal is to help small businesses develop quality retirement plans for their employees through our Lunch and Learn seminars. We provide lunch and learning tools to help your company succeed and unmatched customer service.
Join us each week and a new celebrity guest on Chopping It Up with Buck. Brought to you by Thin Energy. ThinEnergy.com.
All right, we're back chopping it up with Buck. I have Brett McMurphy, his top 25 poll. He got all love except from a couple of his friends. Like we all. But Brett, I agree with you. The polls, I do those early off season. I don't really look at them until after 3 or 4 weeks into the season. But I thought you had some, like I said, Washington. I think people are sleeping on them. Oregon, I think people are sleeping on them, but I really think they're sleeping on Oregon State with Jonathan Smith. So when you look across the college football landscape, what do you expect? I mean, we always tend to go out to, Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, Dabo at Clemson. Who are some other teams that could be lurking that we're not really thinking about that you kind of had in your travels? Folks saying, yeah, this is a different ball club. I see you have Michigan pretty high. I see you have Ohio State. But is there anybody else that we're not thinking? James Franklin with Penn State they haven't been able to get over the hump. But is there anybody else there that we need to really pay close attention to?
Yeah, well, I think, Penn State, I think they could it's funny to call them a dark horse because they're a top 10 team, but with so much emphasis on Ohio State and Michigan, I think Penn State could be a dark horse in the Big Ten. I think they'll be improved at quarterback. I think they have a good shot. I mean, you mentioned Clemson in the ACC. I think this could be the year for Florida State. But again, they've got LSU right out of the gate. LSU could challenge Alabama in the SEC West. But, unfortunately, talking earlier about none of the Pac-12 teams getting to December with less than 2 losses, Florida State and LSU meet Sunday night, opening week. The loser of that game is going to have to run the table to get to the playoff. And I don't think that's going to happen. But I think both of those teams could challenge in their conference. Obviously, Georgia is the major chalk to win the SEC and also to three-peat the first time since in the 1930s. I think that was your freshman year at UCLA, Buck.
Yeah, I hadn't even gotten there yet. I was trying to get to school there. They wouldn't let me there yet. I'm like Benjamin Button. I don't age, or I age backwards, right?
Exactly.
Speaking of LSU, man, Brian Kelly, I wasn't sold on him going down there. I knew he was a great coach. He can be a red ass. He can be that way. But I think something at Notre Dame helped him in that situation there, because after the first few weeks of the season, I thought he was going to lose those guys. Keyshawn Butte, who seemed to be a cancer more than a guy that was really a team guy. And they had some other guys on that team that he really had to kind of hold them together. But they played some really good football down the stretch. And Jaden Daniels looks like he's the kind of guy that can make it in that offense with Brian Kelly. What do you think about Kelly's coaching savvy? I don't know if we give him enough credit for what he was able to do last year to keep that team together.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's easy to look back now like, oh, they went 10-4. Before the season, their win total was 6. Mm-hmm. So nobody was giving them really much of a chance. And then they lose the opener against Florida State, a bunch of special teams issues, blocked extra points. And you're right, they could have lost the team at that point. And then he won basically 8 of his next 9. They got blown out by Tennessee, which a lot of people did last year.
Yeah,
I really thought when Brian Kelly came to LSU, and this wasn't, I'm not like one of these hot take guys, but I really thought Brian Kelly will win a national championship at LSU because what he did at Notre Dame with all of the academic restrictions was pretty remarkable. Yeah. And, this is not to slide LSU, but it's different academic requirements. And this, Buck, the athletes that LSU gets is incredible.
That's
and then
from down my way. Hey, Brett, that's down my way. I was recruited by LSU. A lot of guys. I was born in Beaumont. I have family in Louisiana. They can play down in the boot now. Brothers can ball.
And the thing that settled it, the thing that clinched it for me as far as him winning a national championship, how about the last 3 guys that were head coaches at LSU all won a national championship? No school in the country can say that. I think he can win one there. I think, Saban's, we think he's not going to coach forever, but, speaking about Minority Report, he'll probably still be coaching, way into the future. But no, I think Brian Kelly is one of the best coaches in the country. But it was everybody always wants a bad guy. So when he left Notre Dame, now suddenly he's an asshole and he's a red ass and all this stuff. And it's like, well, wait, when he was there, you guys really don't have a problem. But now that he leaves, and then he, does the family,
Yeah.
stuff, and he does the dance
Hey, I'm
video with
wondering
the
if do
recruit.
they want him? Do they want him to talk like Ed O? Hey man, we got some gumbo and some Creole and some jambalaya down here. That ain't him. He's from the Northeast, but he was trying
Yeah, I mean,
hard. I get it.
but so everyone wants to rip him for all this
Yeah,
stuff, and it's like, hey, the guy's a hell of a coach, man.
he is.
I mean,
He
he took
is.
Notre Dame to an undefeated season. Yeah, they got crushed by Bama because Bama was the better team by
Hmm.
far. But yeah, now he gets to LSU with all those athletes and being in
Yeah.
the SEC. And yeah, I mean, I think again, I'm not saying it's going to happen this year, but I
Uh-huh.
think Brian Kelly will win a national championship at LSU.
I can. I mean, you think about this, and I think about it over the course of time. Even with Les Miles and Ed Orgeron and whoever else is coached there, Nick Saban was able to do it pretty quickly. Have they underachieved a little bit at LSU under some of the direction of Les Miles because he didn't want to change? Ed Orgeron with all the off the field troubles. Now you have a guy that will be focused and will recruit. That's the one thing he said. I know I can recruit here because I've already recruited these areas, right? I've had to go down. And here's the other thing I don't think people realize. In that area, there's a heavy Catholic population. I think, most people understand, but he had already been recruiting there because of that for LSU. I mean, for Notre Dame. So I think that's the one thing we don't give him credit for. And I thought about it right away. All those CYO and Catholic organizations in the South, it's not as many as it is in the Bible Belt, but they still are strong. He could go there because he already had cachet from coaching at Notre Dame.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and look, also what helps is at Notre Dame he recruited nationally.
Yes.
You don't have a small base. You're recruiting
Hmm.
nationally to a national program. And look, LSU is no slouch by any means. They've got a national reach. They're in the SEC. So yeah, I think his experience recruiting nationally will pay huge dividends. And yeah, I mean, I love the guy. I think he's an incredible coach. You know, oh, by the way, he only beat Saban in his first year
Yeah.
in Baton Rouge. That's not
Yeah.
too
That's not easy
shabby.
to do. Yeah, that's not
Yeah.
easy to do.
So it's set up, and the fact again, people are people they can't remember 5 minutes ago, much less 5 years ago. But just look at where LSU was, and again, going into last year, everyone thought they were going to win 6 games, and
Yeah.
he rolls out a double-digit win season. Now you've got some, people, dummies like me, that have him ranked number 6 in the preseason top 25 poll.
That's awesome. So Brett, it's always interesting. How much are you on the phone? It seems like you got to be on the phone. I mean, to get all this information that you have, and I'll say this, you're one of the guys I like because I don't ever feel like you're fair. Whatever you find out, and you let us know about it. So how difficult or how much work do you have to put in to get the information that you do that you come up with, and we're all blown away by some of the stuff?
Yeah, Buck, thanks. I mean, I just, I obviously talk to a lot of people, as many as possible. And, I always joke there's like 4 or 5 people that I trust with my life. And if I get a text from one of those 4 or 5
Mhm.
people and they say the world is ending, then I will tweet the world is ending. I will not confirm it. I believe them that much. But beyond those, because they know what I'm doing, I've done this a long time. They understand, what the impact of what I'm reporting and so forth and so on. But yeah, other than those guys, I mean, you hear stuff all the time, and I've been doing this long enough that I know I need to, if I hear something, some people just go with it. Oh, I heard this, I'm going with it, and then
Mhm.
it's 100% false. So I hear a million things, but then I'll check it out, and if I can't nail it down, then I'm not going to go with it. I mean, when I speak to journalism classes, I tell them, I say, I'd rather get beat on 100 stories than be wrong on one. Because, I remember John Calipari said something. The year Kentucky, they were undefeated regular season, and then they lost in the NCAA tournament. He goes, what's unfortunate is nobody's going to remember our 34 wins. They're only going to remember that one loss. So,
Mhm.
I could break 100 stories, but if I'm wrong on one, then all anyone's going to point out is the one you screwed up on. So basically, if I'm not 100% certain, and by being certain, meaning that I know from the people that are telling me that it's factual because they would have direct knowledge, then I'm not going to go with it. And because of that, you know, when I've gotten tips on certain stories, there's times when I couldn't confirm it and I held off and I got beat on the story.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God, I should have gone, but I wasn't sure. And then there's other times when I couldn't confirm it and I sat back and it was total BS and I would have had egg all over my face. So, you know, there's really no rhyme or reason. And you're right. The great thing about my job is it has flexibility. The worst thing about my job is it has flexibility. You know,
I hear you on that.
I look forward to, you know, some time where you can set the phone down and it's not glued to your hip. And I'll be honest, during this realignment stuff, because stuff has been happening so quick and so sudden, and I've got, you know, I'm texting and calling all these people. You know, literally, I will jump in the shower and I will set the phone on the counter next to the shower so I can see if a text or call comes in. That's how crazy it's been. But hopefully it settles down, and you know, then it's just we're just worrying about football and what's going on the field. But yeah, it's you know, it's the best of times, it's the worst of times being a college football insider.
You said something that's interesting. How many books do you have in you? Because there's some stories on the back end. I can't wait to, you know, whenever we get together and have a beer or a cigar or something, just to sit down and talk, it would be interesting to pick your brain. But how many books do you have in you from all of the stories that you had to cover and the things you had to scoop almost? What would that look like?
Yeah, I mean, a lot, but then it's part of it is, as long as those people are alive, you can't really,
That's true.
you know, you can't tell them. You know how that is. You've got a million stories dealing with all the characters in college football. So yeah, it's just, you know, there's times when, you know, people are telling you stuff, and you know, everyone's got an agenda. And I was talking to another reporter, and he's a good, I'm not going to out him or anything, but he's a good friend of mine. But there's a couple of things that I've reported, and he is basically came back and reported that what I reported was inaccurate. And then a few days later, it was proven that I was accurate and he was inaccurate. And he apologizes and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, this guy told me this," or whatever. Well, he didn't follow it up. He didn't confirm it or whatever. And I told him, I said, you know, look, everyone lies to us. You know, they're trying to get their message out. Everyone lies to us, and you just kind of stack all the lies together until the truth finally emerges. And yeah, there's a ton of stories. I'm thinking of stuff coaches have told me. One coach specifically, he won't let me report. It's not like a huge deal, but he's like, let's wait till the guy dies, and then you can put it out there. So, you know, it's just, I don't know. I mean, how many books are in me? I don't know, because that's hard work to write a book. So I don't know if I want to work that hard. Yeah.
Well, Brett, we do something here called the 2-minute warning. It gives you a chance to just ask rapid fire questions from me, answer quickly, and we march down the field in football fashion. So from an insider perspective, if you weren't in the college football industry, what would you be doing?
Digging ditches.
What would make you want to dig ditches? I'm assuming you're being facetious, but you may want to do a blue collar job. Nothing wrong with it either.
No. I have no other skill set.
Yeah.
I would probably be in PR. My high school journalism teacher forced me to apply for a scholarship at Oklahoma State in journalism. I got it, so that's how I went on my way. If that wouldn't have happened, I probably would be a PE coach somewhere.
Isn't it amazing when coaches see things in you, or people, teachers, mentors see things in you? We do a lot of that on this show. I had you on. We'll probably talk about your history one of the next times we have you on. But isn't it amazing when those people see the things that you can't even fathom for yourself? And when you finally get to it, you're like, I never knew, but they could see it in you.
Yeah, I mean, flat out, she made me, I said, she goes, I want you to sit down and fill out the scholarship application. And, you know, I'm in high school. I'm like, no, that's cool. I go, I don't want to be late to my next class. She goes, no, I already talked to your teacher. She knows you're going to be late. Sit down and fill it out. She forced me to fill it out. And so, yeah. So, yeah, I owe everything to her. Or if you don't like what I do, you can blame her. But
what's her name? We got to give her credit. What's
Kim Postlick. Kim
Postlick
Postlick from Yukon, Oklahoma.
Thank you very much for making this guy fill out that information, even though he's going to be a hard ass and not try to do it.
Yeah. So when I broke the Urban Meyer stuff, you know, back after I was laid off from ESPN, she actually saw my name being out there because I was reporting it, and she actually reached out through Facebook, and so we caught up. And I said, "Hey, it's all because of you." So, yeah, thanks for mentioning her.
Yeah, no problem. What's the one item you could never live without? Probably your phone is one.
Yeah, I hate to say that. You have to. It's funny, you know, I've been doing this a while. The old days, you had to sit in the office and wait for people to call you.
Mm-hmm.
You were just sitting there staring at a phone. That's hysterical now.
Hey, we'll move. You're moving down the field, Brett. Being the quarterback that you are, I think you got it down the field. You got to look for the tight end, though. I told you that when you came off the field. Find the why. He'll be open on this one. When you think about music, what's your genre? What do you hear? Because I mean, going to stadiums, you hear all kind of things, right? But what's your genre of music? What are you listening to in your iPad, Spotify? You know, whatever you're listening to now.
So, Buck, I'm going to ask you. So it's funny you bring that up. So, like, literally, from whenever you put this out until August 26th, you know, at my Twitter feed at Brett_McMurphy or at actionnetwork.com, I've asked every head football coach their favorite musical artist, and we're rolling them out every day. By conference, we divide the conference in two. So check it out. Look for the Action Network or look at my Twitter feed. So I'm going to ask Buck, and I will answer your question, but I'm going to ask you that same thing I asked the coaches. Who's your favorite musical artist? And you can only name one. I don't want to hear it's between this guy or that guy.
Ooh,
yes.
Only name one.
You're on the clock.
I got so many, Brett, but if you're going to gun the head, I got to go with Sade.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's hard for me. Who's yours?
Mine is Prince. Here's some backstory for a former coach, no longer coaching. His favorite artist was Sade. A former Pac-12 coach by the name of David Shaw.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm gonna tell you, Prince is right up. I mean, the ones I have, like, just these icons, and Sade for some reason was just that time for me. But I love Prince. I mean, Prince is it's hard for me not to say his name. But then I like groups, you know. So I have so many different things. But Sade just seems to just pop right to mind. So David Shaw. Hey, I understand him. That's why we relate to each other. I get it now. I love that. Yeah, I was following you, and I'm going to keep looking at that. But that'll be interesting to see some of the coaches and who they like and who they you know, really aspire from who inspires them as a music you know, area. I also say this, man. Chris Stapleton is a bad dude. The Roots. I mean, you know, I can just name different genres and different kinds of music that I love too. So I think when you get coaches talking about music, isn't it crazy how they
Stapleton.
Open up? Go ahead.
No, it is, and I did it because I think it shows about their personality.
Yeah.
You get to see a little something about them. Some of my friends that, you know, I've shared some of the answers with, they're like, "Oh man, I'm conflicted. I hate that coach." But we have the same favorite musical artist, so they don't know what to do.
Whoa.
So, yeah. So there were two that had Chris Stapleton. Give you a little sneak peek ahead. PJ Fleck of Minnesota.
Roll the boat.
And then John Summerall of Troy.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Well, you know, that's one we got to score on, Brett. I mean, that shows how we're simpatico. And I know we always get along, but I love that you're doing that. I love that you're able to honor your journalism teacher in high school who forced you to do this now that you become one of the best insiders, and you can, thank her for pushing you to do that. And you scored on the 2-minute drill, pretty easy down the field.
Thanks, buddy.
Hey, man, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. That's Brett McMurphy from the Action Network on Chopping It Up with Buck this week. Join us every single week when we bring you the best in the business.
Join us each week and a new celebrity guest on Chopping It Up with Buck. Brought to you by Thin Energy, thinenergy.com.